Hi, I'm Martha Beck.
And I'm Rowan Mangan, and this is another episode of Bewildered, the podcast for people trying to figure it out. Tell me, Marty, what are you trying to figure out this week?
I am trying to figure out what to do with our half Zeus baby as she grows.
Right, yeah.
I've said previously that we believe that the sperm donor for Rose's IVF procedure was Zeus.
A lot of people think, that having a baby that's half God is going to be all like awesome all the time, but it comes with challenges and people don't realize.
It's right. You're absolutely right. They're always like, I don't know, firing up a forge in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bashing down pillars. It's not easy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, her superhuman strength is becoming a huge issue as she approaches 2 years old. I mean, when she was 5 months old, she could still drag Adam around the house, helpless in her grip. And now she's 2, and I've been trying to buff up to cope with her. Seriously, I've been getting physical therapy, and then I lift weights like a maniac to try to build my strength up. So she followed me in. We have a little home gym, right? And she follows me in there, and I'm doing these things for physical therapy that are called kettlebell exercises. Have you seen these things?
I have now.
They're like weird little suitcases, like a really heavy block of metal with a handle on it.
They look like something that you shouldn't pick up if it's going to be heavy. They don't look like they're aerodynamic or good for your back.
No, they don't look good.
No, they don't.
They come from, I have heard, from the dark days of Soviet repression in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently they invented these to make people feel worse. Which is, I don't know. This is, sorry for all our Russian friends out there. I'm sure that you're just a jolly, jolly bunch. No, that's not true. I went to school in Singapore with a bunch of Russians who had to have a Soviet communist minder there, watching them learn Chinese so that they wouldn't learn anything that was against the party. And they were not happy people.
This is a complicated backstory.
They would bring vodka, they would get drunk, they would sing songs in Russian, and our only common language was Chinese. So it was very strange. Anyway, more about that someday.
No doubt.
It was a fun experience.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, back to the baby.
Kettlebells, the baby. So what you do with a kettlebell, it's like you're trying to lift an incredibly heavy bucket of despair. And so what I'm supposed to do is get one of these kettlebells between my legs, not the way you think.
Hello.
On the floor with my legs to either side. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And then you squat low. You squat very low. You grab the kettlebell by its weird little handle, and you slowly, in a controlled fashion, you stand up from your deep squat as you lift the bucket of despair over your head, and then you slowly come down again. So I'm doing this with like 15 pounds, and it's killing me. And Lila comes in, and she sees the 5-pounder, which I can barely lift myself. So she goes over there, and they're very imitative at this stage, young demigods. So she grabs the 5-pounder, she squats down, she comes up from a deep squat, lifting that thing, and she flings her arms up over her head with such force, I am not kidding you, that she flies into the air and goes backwards like 5 feet and lands head first with the kettlebell still over her head, and the most startled expression I've ever seen on a human being. And I'm like, that's because you're half Zeus. I can't lift that thing. You managed to not only lift it, but make you fly. And now I'm afraid she has like a gym phobia and will never work out again.
Yeah, honestly. She did make some pretty extreme sounds after that. And we shouted down. We weren't that worried, to be quite honest, even though she was making a terrible racket.
There was a commotion upstairs.
Yeah, we said, what happened? And you said, I can't explain it with language. I have to show you. And look, here you are explaining it with language to our grateful
but the
listeners.
image isn't. You had to be there, honestly. Someday I'll film the whole thing. But I'm not going to be able to get her to do that again because her will is stronger than all of ours.
It's true.
And she can hurt us all physically.
Yeah.
With a kettlebell.
Yeah.
But she can fly with a kettlebell too.
It's confusing.
She must be half Hermes. Wasn't he the one with wings on his feet? Whatever. Ro, what are you trying to figure out?
Yeah, good. I'm trying to figure out like the nature of your like psychology.
Oh, God.
There's a way that you
Heaven
have
help you.
of being positive
Uh-huh.
that is confusing to me. And I appreciate
Why would that be, little girl? How would you be confused? Why am I I'm trying to confuse you
You're
in a
succeeding.
positive way. It's sickening.
Okay, let's not call me little girl anymore. Okay?
I know, it's gross. It's like I need to go wash my mouth out. Oh, now that sounds bad.
Okay.
I just need to lie down. What? Go back. What were you saying? Come on,
So,
out with it. My
Not-
psychology.
not so long ago, I asked you a simple question.
Yes.
And I saw you struggle to be really positive. You wanted to be honest
Yes.
in answering me.
Yeah.
But you didn't want to make that honesty like hurt my feelings or something.
This is a common problem. This
And
isn't
so
just me. What did I do?
So I said to you, do you like blue cheese? Simple enough question. I honestly, like, I've got to tell you, Muddy, I wasn't that invested in the outcome of the question. I was just making conversation.
One can never tell when confronted with a question like that, unprepared.
So she looked like I was interrogating her and like cast her eyes about wildly about the room. And I'd deviously like talked her into a corner, and now she didn't know how to get out.
How would anyone answer under this type of grilling? The third degree. Do you like blue cheese? Come up with it now.
So this is what she said. She said, no, but I am aware that some people do. And I was just like, I was trying to figure that out for some time. Do you like blue cheese? No, but I'm aware that some people do.
What if you had, like, I didn't know you treasure your connection with blue cheese. Like, it could be so important. You could have waited this long, years into our relationship before you finally pop the question, do you like blue cheese?
I think she's going to pop the question tonight.
And you don't want to just toy with your beloved's feelings. What if you had a whole blue cheese spectacle that you were about to present to me and I just condemned it with one word? No.
So when you say I popped the question, was the confusion about the fact that I got down on one knee and had a little box that I presented to you
full of blue cheese?
Marty, it's time.
It's time.
We'll be right back with more Bewildered. I have a favour to ask. You might not know this, but ratings and reviews are like gold in the podcasting universe. They get podcasts in front of more faces, more eyes, more ears, all the bits that you could have a podcast in front of. That's what they do. So it would help us enormously if you would consider going over to your favourite podcasting app, especially if it's Apple, and giving us a few stars, maybe even 5, maybe even 6. If you can find a way to hack the system, I wouldn't complain. And a review would also be wonderful. We read them all and love them. So thank you very much in advance. Let's just go out there and bewilder the world. Mwah. So, Marty, this is a BeWild Files episode today because we have been hearing from our beloved listeners.
Oh.
And sometimes it's more interesting to hear about what y'all are trying to figure out.
No kidding.
Than what we are trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this and you think, I'm trying to figure something out, I wish I could play along.
Yeah.
You can. You can play along. No worries. Go to my website, rowanmangan.com/bewildered, and I wrote out a nice little guide to submitting your questions.
It's amazing
to us.
how you did that.
It is amazing.
I don't have the logistical competency, but go ask questions.
So today we're going to listen to Bev, and here comes Bev.
Hi, my name is Bev. I'm from Ohio. I want to first thank you so much for this podcast. I love it and I am so grateful. And it just speaks to my heart and I take away such wisdom. And thank you for the work you're putting out in the world. If there could be a future focus at some point on codependency, I am learning so much about that term and what it means and how it applies to my life as a mother and caregiver. And wow, I'm just becoming so much more aware and yet not uh, able to navigate or
Mm.
struggling to navigate. So, any insight I would just be so grateful. Thank you.
Thanks, Bev.
Thank you, Bev. Wow, this is a big one.
And one close to our
So
hearts,
close to our hearts.
our codependent little hearts.
Yeah, and it originally was about it's so funny because a book, by Melody Beatty called Codependent No More kind of got the whole concept into the collective psyche,
Mhm.
and that book her books helped me so much, and I just absorbed them when I was in my early 30s, and now they've done a republication of Codependent No More, and guess who they sent it to for a blurb?
I would have to guess Reese Witherspoon.
Richard Nixon.
He
Uh,
really needs to work on his codependency.
yeah, no, they did send it to me, and I was like and it's so nice that Bev asked about that because my whole brain is all sort of turned, that direction as I read through this beautiful, wonderful book.
So let's just like get straight to a good working definition of
Yes.
codependency because I feel like there's where it came from and then there's also just the way that that term is used
Yeah.
in a sort of pop psychology sort
Yeah,
of way
yeah.
that is probably easier for most of us to relate to, if
Yeah,
that
it
makes
was
sense.
first about addiction and how that affects people, but now it really what they really discovered was that codependency is the way people typically act when they're around an addict that they love, but it's also the way they react when they're around anyone else that they love.
Yeah.
So it's an over caretaking. It's basically putting someone else's well-being and behaviors at such a high level of attention in your mind that you actually forget yourself.
Mhm.
So it's all about serving and helping others and making sure their lives are perfect. And you are not in the equation.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And you can automatically see why Bev refers to herself as a mother
Right.
with reference to codependency.
Mhm.
And the reason we thought this was such a great question was because in our culture, for many of us, it is seen as laudable to have this disordered
Yes.
behavior where you put yourself last and almost like erase
Yeah.
yourself in your caregiving for others, right?
Yeah, there's this light bulb joke. How many good mothers does it take to put in a light bulb?
How many?
And the answer is, "Oh, no, you take it. I'll just sit here in the dark." And that's like the virtuous mother paradigm, and it
Yeah.
exists a lot.
And what's so interesting
Yes.
is that when I started thinking about doing a podcast on codependency, I remembered this thing that we did. Um, I don't know, we hadn't been together for very long. We were living in California and we would get up in the morning every day one winter and we'd
Mhm.
sit down with our coffee in front of the fire and we would read that Melody Beatty. We'd read from the Melody Beatty book and then we'd just discuss our codependency. And which didn't seem odd at all at the time. It seemed perfectly natural.
Because we were all flaming codependents.
But then a friend of mine came from Australia and we were just like, so this this is the part of the day where we sit down and talk
Join
about our
our family.
codependency. Um, I was trying so we read our little passage and we started talking about it and I was trying to like include my friend and be like, "So, do you find that in your codependency?" And
Mhm.
my friend was a little bit offended. And she
I would say
said,
quite a bit offended.
I would say so. And she said, I just don't know how I feel about the fact that you are both just assuming that I'm codependent. And that's when Marty and I looked at each other like, that's a compliment we're paying you, thinking you're codependent. And that's when we realized that the culture is inside us.
Yes, it has fully possessed us.
Yeah, but
And of course, we immediately started groveling to your friend because that's what a good codependent does. "You're not happy with me? Okay, I'll do anything to make you happy."
that's what a good codependent. What does a bad codependent do?
That, but also then with a little murder afterwards.
Love it.
Because if you put all attention off yourself and on other people, the natural response going from culture to nature is it feels wrong. It can feel like resentment. It can feel like exhaustion. And I don't think there's a parent out there who's tried to be a good parent who hasn't felt this way, like put the baby first to the point where you are falling apart.
Mm.
And it kind of is a natural thing that happens when you've got a very, very small infant.
Mm.
But then we like try to make it persist throughout the life cycle where we're always there for our kids and we're always there for everybody, trying to make them happy the way you would try to make a brand new baby feel happy.
Right. So it's not just a dynamic that plays out in parent-child
No.
relationships. It's often in spouse
Yeah.
relationships and all kinds of different ones,
Yeah,
right?
friendships,
Mhm.
even professional relationships. Because it's like, that's a good way to think about it, is that you assume everyone else is as needy and unable to communicate as a newborn baby. So
Mm.
you have to read their minds, guess their needs, give them what they want before they even know they want it, and
Give them what
always
you
keep them happy.
Right. So you project what they want and need, and then you try to do it before they're conscious of
Even needing
wanting
it.
it. Yeah.
Just do something before they stop screaming. This is the code. When it's a newborn baby, I'm still talking about newborn baby. But when you grow up, it's more like if somebody says, well, I've been staying at your house for a day and a half and you haven't offered me any blue cheese. And then you're like, oh my God, get blue cheese. Like, you don't want anyone else to be unhappy with you in any way or unhappy with life in any
And
way.
that's why you were being codependent when you refused to give me a direct answer to the
Yes.
question, do you like blue cheese? Because you thought that I needed you to like it.
Well, I was trying to figure out if you needed me to like it, because that's the whole thing of codependency. Like, you're trying to figure out what another person's psyche is doing so that you can, fill all their needs before they get upset.
And when we were chatting about this, you talked about how, like, for some people in some relationships where there's the person who is receiving the codependent's attention
Mhm.
gets really used to it and enjoys that. And how does that function?
It's kind of the definition of entitlement in a way, because you get served by the other person and you don't even realize what's going on. So the metaphor I always use with people, once I figured it out for myself, intellectually, if not emotionally, is that if you ask a spider what it loves and whom it loves, it might tell you, I love flies,
Hmm.
because spiders love flies. The way they crunch, the way they taste, all about flies is wonderful for a spider.
Sounds
And the
delicious.
way they express their love is to capture the fly and wrap it up alive in like a little torturous straitjacket. And then whenever the spider wants a snack, it can go down, inject its like mouth parts into the living fly and suck out some life essence and just go, that was wonderful. I just love talking to you. We're such good friends, right? Because I always feel better after we talk. And the fly is going, that's so interesting because I do not. Transfer that to like energy, attention, service to another person. The codependent is the fly. Like, I feel completely bound to sit here and wait for you to take my life energy for your needs. And the spider is like, this is such a great relationship. So the person higher in the power hierarchy is often the spider, and it's being served by the fly. I will give you what you need because otherwise you will hurt me. And the spider feels like they're best friends and everything's great. And the fly is being slowly consumed from within. And that's how codependency feels.
But the fly is participating in its own
Yes.
disempowerment.
Yes.
There. It's not like the spider catches it and wraps it up. The fly comes over and says, I'm more than happy for you to wrap me up and suck my life force, right?
I would argue that there is a net that the fly gets caught in initially.
A web, surely.
So the fly is like, let's say you're a baby, you're a child, everything's great, bzzz, your little fly. And then you just kind of encounter someone who is already a spider. So it has the psychology of entitlement, addiction, whatever, that there's that whole, it's the opposite of codependency. And that's a topic for another podcast. But it's basically a sense of being entitled to be served by codependent people.
Right.
If your mother is highly codependent and does everything for you, you can grow up expecting that people will just do everything for you like your mother did, right? So at that point, the I've lost who's who in this scenario, but say the fly is a girl fly, identifies cis female, gets caught in a web, and says, "Oh, okay, so this, oh, I have to start over." Just back.
She has become enmeshed in her own metaphorical web about a metaphorical web.
Okay, you're a fly. You're born free to fly. And you go zipping about. You get caught in the web of someone who is already entitled. And then they get angry at you if you don't serve them the way their mother did or whatever.
All right.
They do, or they whine, or they get sullen. Anyway, they give you clues that you're not doing it right. And as a happy little fly, you're like, oh, I want to make you happy. And before you know it, that's the string wrapping around and around and around you, is their reactions of feeling entitled and being angry or sad if you don't do everything they want.
Gotcha.
And it looks, as I said, like a lovely relationship, but it's really only lovely for the spider. And not even that. It's not good for anybody.
Yeah. So how does the culture encourage this sort of relationship playing out? Like, because on the podcast, what we try to do is kind of pull aside the curtain to make ourselves conscious of where we're being manipulated by the culture away from our own truth. So I'm curious about, like, this is obviously a psychological phenomenon, but there's also culture at play in encouraging that kind of behavior out of some of us, right?
Yeah. And it's pervasive, but the first thing that comes to mind is something that happened several decades ago, but it's still, the echo of it still resonates. And it was a radio program called Queen for a Day. And on this radio program, people would send in stories of the mother or wife in their family who was so depleted by constant caretaking. Like, she goes to all the soup kitchens and makes soup and all day long, and then she comes home and she makes soup for us, and then she tucks us all in, and she's wasting away. She's got several terminal illnesses. She's depressed. And they would try to build it up. So this woman was so deserving of pity. And then they'd compete to see who deserved the most pity. And she got to be queen for a day and get her a new washer dryer. I'm not even kidding.
To help her serve others more.
Yes, to
Oh
help
my
her
God.
serve others. And that was sort of the model of virtuous motherhood.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard to avoid the fact that this is a bit of a gendered thing. When you
Yeah.
look at traditional gender roles, there is a lot of mother and wife in there. I don't think I'm imagining that.
Yeah, there are plenty of male codependents,
Yeah.
male identified codependents, but it is true that it's for anybody who is higher in the power hierarchy, they're more likely to be conditioned to act like a spider.
To be
And that's true
served.
of race as well as gender. And then the people down lower in the power structure expect to be treated badly, expect to have to do things for others with no particular reward. They undervalue themselves. And women have been lower in the power hierarchy than men historically. So it is much more identified as a female virtue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we were playing out when we were like, to my friend, we were like, well, we were just complimenting you by assuming you were codependent.
Yeah,
you know?
that you give till it hurts.
Yeah, exactly. It's so interesting. I definitely feel that as a more recent mother to a half god. Just that that sometimes subtle, sometimes not so subtle pressure from other people to obliterate myself in service of my child,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm putting that strongly. It is a much more subtle thing, but it's I think it's what's given rise to the very common refrain that people use about, borrowed from the airplane safety thing about, you have to fit your own oxygen mask before your child's.
Right.
And that gets applied to women's lives much more broadly, because if we're all running ourselves ragged at a certain point, we're not
Right.
good to anyone.
Yeah. I do think also that if you've had to take care of someone or something, like a pet or a baby, and most of the people doing care for very young babies are women. You get into that mindset of trying to be almost psychic about understanding other people, what they need. And I got much more codependent during the times when my older children were tiny, and had to sort of pull myself out of it and learn. Well, I'll never forget, speaking of the way nature does things, when my older kids were about 12, 14, and 16, or 10, 12, and 14, they were sitting around like writing computer programs and stuff. I mean, they were capable of taking care of themselves while I was making them dinner one day, and the TV was on. And it was a documentary about bears, which the narrator pronounced bear. And I'll never forget, I was making a salad and looking at the TV, and the man said, "The mother bear will not do things for her cubs that they have learned to do for themselves, for this would make them ill-equipped to survive in the wild." And I was like, wait. And I looked at these 3 very competent human beings whom I was serving dinner, and I just said, "You know what, kids? Things are going to change. If you can do it for yourself, I'm not going to do it for you." Because that is nature's way.
Yeah.
And you actually incapacitate people by doing everything for them.
So if we want to follow Bev and say, okay, to come back to our true nature, away from, what's our wild nature here, away from the kind of culturally informed, codependent
Yeah.
dynamic set of behaviors, how can we do that, do you think, Marty? How do we unhook from the spider-fly relationship?
The first thing is to notice that it's happening. I had people tell me a lot, like, you seem really worn out and you're trying to take care of everybody, and it's stupid. I mean, people were very blunt about that. So that's one clue. But another clue is that you start to feel exhausted with other people, and you have to go away by yourself to regain the energy that you've expended taking care of other people. So you're exhausted around other people, and it feels like a task. And then the last thing is you'll start to feel, you will deny this, but you will begin to feel resentful. Because anger is our boundary setting emotion. And resentment is the little teeny kind of anger. And you just feel like, really? I made you 6 different kinds of blue cheese and you don't like any of them? Really?
No, but I'm aware that some people might.
Oh, so good. I feel so much better now. So yeah, and then it also can happen in a lot of people when it was about addiction. It's when you hit bottom, like addicts hit bottom when they have some gruesome experience. For an addict, it's when you realize that all the control efforts you're trying to use, for a codependent, it's learning that you can't control other people no matter how hard you try. You can't make them happy. You can't make them love you. You can't make them feel what you want them to feel or do what you want them to do. And so so there's the resentment, there's the needing to get away, there's the clues from other people, and then there's this thing of, oh my God, this cannot work. I haven't been successful at making everyone happy, even though I've spent myself trying to do it.
So it must be like, it strikes me that there's going to be a challenge as you try to change your behavior with people that you want to maintain a relationship with, just on different terms.
Yeah, you've had plenty of experiences this way.
Sure.
It's interesting because you, at a certain point in your life, were a caregiver for someone with paralysis, right? Yeah.
Quadriplegia, yeah.
And you always say, that taught me to be a good helper. And you are crazy good at helping.
I love helping.
I know, but it's like, it's supernatural. Maybe you're the god half of Lila.
Hello. Which god is just a really good helper?
Bucephalus, the god of codependency. Actually, Bucephalus was Alexander the Great's horse. But, the 2 people can have the same name. Anyway, how does it feel for you when you know you're exhausting yourself taking care of others? Because look, you got a baby, you got me, there are dogs involved.
That's a weird bit of language.
Karen and Adam, and you're like trying to cook for you think you should do everything. You think you should cook, you should clean, you should get Lila up, give her a bath, you should you try to do everything, and every now and again you burn out.
That's true.
That's the truth of it.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So how do you get back?
Well, I don't have to unhook from those behaviors with people who feel entitled to them. And I think that's the difference is, I tend to over help or over caretake, but this is not good behavior, but what I start doing is like just being really pathetic and like apologizing for not doing everything and waiting for you guys to go, well, we don't really expect you to do all those things. And then I go, really? And you say, yeah, it's okay. And I say, okay, sorry for being passive aggressive.
It's the only kind of aggressive I can be. No, you're very right that works only in situations where people don't feel entitled. So if you're in with a spider and you start to say, what about me? I remember talking to one woman she was a client. She was monumentally narcissistic. And she was like, I can't believe these men I date. I mean, after a few years, it's always, what about me? Don't I count? No, they don't count. I mean, there are people who aren't going to like it when you stop helping too much. They like you to be codependent, and it's still the worst thing you can do for everyone involved.
Do you think that with people who do feel entitled to that sort of that quality of caretaking or whatever, do you think you can like restructure a relationship with them that's not based on that? Or if they're in that place, is it just like probably better to move on?
I think you can restructure it. And that is the work of a lot of marriages, like straight marriages where there's cisgender norms. But the woman says to the man, you're really entitled. And he goes, really? I didn't notice. And she says, yeah, you do. And same with like white fragility. Like if people come and explain to me where I'm entitled and how I'm assuming my right to get things from them, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I change my behavior. So that's, I think, the vast majority of people.
So you're just talking about where it's invisible privilege that can be worked with, but that's different from where there's actual narcissism. And
you don't know which it is until you stop over helping.
Oh, interesting.
And when you say, okay, where's the limit of my resentment? Like, I'm really resenting talking to you for 2 hours a week, so I'm going to cut down to 1. And you say, you know what? I'm really exhausted. You're my best friend or whatever, but I only want to talk to you for 1 hour a week until I'm less busy. And they go, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have that kind of, they get really nasty. The spider loves the fly, but only in a consumptive sense. And when you try to leave, they sting, they bite. And that's a really good sign that you should be out of there.
Do you have experience of trying to get out of one of these?
Yeah. You may not know this, but I was raised Mormon. I know.
What?
It's crazy. Also later, I've never mentioned this. I went to Harvard.
Marty, there's so much.
I never told you.
You just never tell me anything.
Anyone. But let me tell you a little bit about growing up Mormon. I later did some research on the subculture when I was a sociologist. And
let me tell you something about growing up Mormon. Once I'd finished with it, I researched it.
I did. That's how I got out, get research credit for saving your life. So I was interviewing women, and one of them said she went to her religious authority and she said, my family makes me do everything for them. I'm exhausted. I can't take this much longer. And they treat me like I'm a second-class citizen. And the guy looked at her and he goes, but sister, you are a second-class citizen. Yeah. And so she was supposed to go home. Good Lord. I heard so many stories, not just in Mormonism, of couples going to a family therapist and saying, he's fine, but she's exhausted and can't seem to get her shit together. Like she's doing all these things and she's tired. And they would all sit around talking about what to do to medicate her so she'd be happy in that role.
Wow.
Instead of questioning the role itself.
The role, yeah.
And that was non-Mormon. Like there is this entitlement built into every piece of society. And depending on where you happen to live or be born or be characterized, that's going to happen to you. And what you have to do then is
No. I'm asking about you and how
Me.
you have done this.
Was I climbing up on my life coaching pedestal again?
You were a little bit, yeah. What you have to do is... No.
You know that it's one of your jobs to buff my pedestal.
Is that what you call it these days?
Ooh. Wow. Pedestal's the wrong word for lesbians, isn't it? It's just, yeah, I'm not sure what you have to buff, but we'll talk about that in another episode. What I do is not advisable. And that is I go to passive aggressive, like, I get sick so that I literally physically can't. And then I'm trying, even though I'm sick, to do something. At a certain point, I get angry. Yes. And then I become what I call the exploding doormat. Mm-hmm. Use me. Why do you always use me? Like, that's not healthy either. And I've tried to do a lot less of it in recent decades. But when it's like you've got a pillow smashed against your face. First you protest weakly, and then your survival skills will kick in, your survival instincts. And what you want to do is stop it. What you want to do. Oh, my pedestal. What I try to do is stop it before I kill anyone.
Yeah. No, I think like so many of us relate to the exploding doormat. I've done that so many times.
Yeah. And you have to pick it up in a place that's not explosive, but it's still, that's what a lot of us overhelpers say, that we don't have a right to get angry until we are literally about to die.
Yeah.
The mother bear will not do for any other bear what that bear can do for itself. And that's better for all the bears.
Yeah. I just realized that the mother bear, her ego might also be invested in the bears can't do it for themselves. Only I can do it for the little baby bears. Do you know what I mean? Like that there's some ego work
that's true.
The fly has to do as well.
Can I talk about one more piece of research? I'm sorry, it's not mine. They found in the 80s, when men were trying to step up and help more with housework, that a lot of the wives, when they would do studies on households, would shame and basically belittle and attack the husbands for doing the housework wrong. And it was like, no, this is the way you do it. I hate it. It's too much for me, but I'm proud of the way I do it, and I get to control it. And so weirdly, they were losing part of their own ego investment when somebody else took part of the job. And I felt what that's like when I think I know how to do something and someone comes to help, and I'm just like, I need the help, but you're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. You have to let the other bears do it the way the bears do it. If they're not endangering life or country or whatever, let them do it the way they do it.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I'm all for that.
Yeah, get off the web. Not the internet, the spider web.
Get off whatever web is causing you to overhelp and undercare for yourself.
And if you are a bear and you're caught in a spider's web, really, like, buck up.
For God's sake.
Yeah, for God's sake. Let's
pull yourself together.
Yes. Yeah. Nobody's that codependent.
I think Bev has pretty much figured it out via this podcast, don't you? How could she not have?
Bev, she's wrapped in spider silk. She's fighting her way out. She's exploding like a doormat. She's got bears everywhere. It's a wonderful time in the Bewildered universe.
Yeah. I think all our bewilderment really just comes down to mixed metaphors.
Like, tragically true.
Mixed metaphors.
One of my kids once said to me, "Gosh, Mom, it must be great to make a living extending metaphors." And I was like, it is. But I won't do it for you because you can do it for yourself.
You can extend your own metaphors.
So with that, I think it's time to say to Bev and all our wonderful people out there, stay wild.
We hope you're enjoying Bewildered. If you're in the USA and want to be notified when a new episode comes out, text the word WILD to 570-873-0144. We're also on Instagram. Our handle is Bewildered Podcast. You can follow us to get updates, hear funny snippets and outtakes, and chat with other fans of the show. Bewildered is produced by Scott Forster with support from the brilliant team at MBI. And remember, if you're having fun, please rate and review. And stay wild.